produce and all agree to be.
Yeah, I would like to tape if we don't have any dissenters. Can we just all agree without?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. We've all agreed that we can be audio taped. There's no need for permission for videotaping. But just for the benefit of Terry and Bob, who don't know everyone, if everyone could go around the room and just introduce themselves. Is that all right? I'm Steve Sayers.
Bob Davis, General Manager.
And President Woods Hole.
Axel Dang, President Woods Hole. Derek Turkington, President Woods Hole.
Suzanne Koffler, Resident Woods Hole.
Doug Brown, resident East Falmouth and Selectman.
Lori Raymond, resident of Falmouth.
Jim Sullivan, resident of Bourne.
Craig Coppola, West Falmouth.
John Goldman, Woods Hole.
Nat Trumbull, Woods Hole.
Terry Keneally, General Counsel.
Bob Morris, Woods Hole.
All right. Yesterday, Nat asked questions about our stormwater permit. And my understanding is that the stormwater permit is really part of the order of conditions from the Falmouth Conservation Commission. And in that order of conditions, which I brought 2 copies, they refer to the stormwater management plan, outfall 1, which is figure 5, outfall 2, which is figure 6, and outfall 3, figure 7. Those are incorporated into the order of conditions for the project. And so I brought the order of conditions and the 3 figures that they refer to. At the moment, I just want to show that the stormwater management plan has the piping going underneath the plaza to the north and to the south of the building.
Show Doug, he may understand that better.
Okay. And to the south of the plaza on the south. These are the major ones. There are 3 outfalls. There's an outfall on the north side, which is going to be right next to the bike park, and then an outfall that goes just between slips 1 and 2, and another outfall that goes between slips 2 and 3. Actually, the slips are 1, 2, and 3.
It's like only 2 to me. Is it really?
There's one up on the north side. If you look, first column of shows you it right there.
What am I looking at here?
That's
main
number
one?
2.
Okay. Oh, I see. This is going to...
This is for outfall 1,
Yeah.
so it only has that designation. And then this is for outfall 2. I didn't have a chance to look at this.
Yeah.
So there's
And that's where they
still
designate
the
outfall
outfalls.
2, I
Right.
think. And this is for outfall 3.
Sure.
And so they designate outfall 3.
But so those wouldn't change if your building changed. The building
Well-
would just be turned and still be within these 2, right?
Correct. The reason for the location or the positioning of the building really didn't have anything to do with the stormwater management plan, but he
Right.
asked for it.
Yeah.
So I gave it to him.
Sure.
Because-
It makes it
Because
understandable.
the location of the building was determined even before we developed the stormwater management plan.
Right.
It was developed back in 2013 and 2014, and these drawings were prepared in connection with our notice of intent. with
And the
Falmouth
location is
Conservation.
probably optimal, but why, if we could turn it 90 degrees and you still get your buses around the way you want to, it would seem like it would work so much better,
Well-
personally.
Correct. We tried that. I mean, we went through the other concepts that also Nat talked about, E1, and I think he was talking about E3.
Yeah, I saw
Not-
all those
not
where they're
easy.
pushed to the other areas.
The push to the
I think
other.
you're in the right spot being in the middle, don't you? I mean,
That's
I
where,
agree with that.
that's.
I disagree.
Okay,
I know, I mean, that's where, I mean, sorry, but we really looked hard in those years at the other ones. The ones where we were pushed on the other ones, this terminal design it's complex because it's such a relatively small property. And you always have to keep in account flood design or flood zone levels, which the building has to be at least 13 feet, if not higher, because of the flood zone requirements.
Yeah.
And then you have accessibility requirements. So in order to have proper pedestrian flow around the terminal, you have to keep your slopes at 5%, which is 1 in 20, with no cross slopes of more than 2%. That's my memory of that. I haven't been involved in that for a long time. So all of these slopes have to come down, and so you have to go from 13 feet at the terminal building down to 5 feet at the intersection of Luscombe and Railroad Avenue. And then you have to, the Transfer bridges are at varying lengths, let's say an average of 9 feet elevation. We have 3 transfer bridges, and they're each designed to primarily serve different boats that are going to be there for the most part. So slip 1 is at a slightly lower elevation. I've forgotten the about, let's say, 8 feet. And that's just from memory. That's for the Island Home and the Motor Vessel Governor, and probably the Katama or the Gayhead, because they have low freeboards, they have low freight decks, and so you have a lower transfer bridge. And it's designed with those 50-foot long transfer bridges to be able to go up, I think 50 feet would be 2 feet either way. Now I'm really getting out of my league. So it can go up a certain amount and still maintain a 5% slope for 50 feet and go down the same amount with the freeboards depending upon the tide of those boats and still be fully accessible. And slip 2 is for the Martha's Vineyard and the Woods Hole. They have higher freight freeboards, higher freight decks, and so I think that's at 9 feet. And then slip 3 is designed to be an average of the slips 1 and 2, the elevation of that, so that we can use that under most conditions for any of our boats, except at certain high tide or low, extreme high tide or extreme low tide issues. We do have a variance from the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board for those because of the extreme tides here and the nature of our operations. They made a determination that our system for the piers is fully accessible except for the gangways at the end. And the gangways at the end are not accessible under all tide conditions. Okay, but they are functional, but accessible technically meaning the slopes, for a ramp 1 and 12, you have to have the handrails parallel to the gangway, and so we have some variances to cover that. So you have to worry about the accessibility all the way around the building, and wherever you put it, you have to think about that. And that's dictated by the flood zone as well, because the building probably is going to have to be under the code requirements around 17 feet for the first floor, the finished first floor. But we are hoping to get a variance at 13 feet, because that would, taking it up 4 feet higher would impose a substantial hardship on many of our passengers and customers who are either disabled or just can't do it. And when we got a variance, by the way, for the temporary terminal building, I think that's at 9 feet. And for those of you on video, this is all from memory, and my memory's not terrific, so I'm giving you the numbers, but that's as
Steve,
best as
that
I can
did
recall.
raise a question. There was a lot of interest in written responses to the first set of questions, which I guess 10 weeks ago we submitted. Because there are almost 100 of us who are interested in the responses, is that a possibility? So that we can be sure of your answers and you don't have to rely on memory.
It's on videotape, but yes, that's a possibility. I had hoped, I think, in the November board meeting, I said I wanted to have workshops because we thought it's more constructive to have an exchange. And once we put things down in writing, my sense is people's positions become hardened because they've done it, they've thought it through, and that's the answer. You look at it and that's the answer we're going to give. So I'd rather have these meetings first and talk about it, because we may not end up at the same place as we would have ended up without the meetings. I'm not sure, because people come in with ideas, and if we were to just be decisive and say, this is the way it is in writing, I don't want it to inhibit the ability to evolve. So, but I can do that, we can do that. It also takes time for us to do it in writing, which, as if you've read the HMS report, very few people around here have much time at this point.
Can I ask you a question about the
Yep.
sighting again?
At some point,
Well,
you
finish
have
your-
special privileges. At some point, we had nominated Lori to actually run methodically through these
Okay.
questions.
Okay, then let's do that.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of people who could not be here today who are very
That's
interested
fine.
in
All right, okay.
precisely how you're going to answer these questions.
So here is,
But, Doug,
No, go ahead, that's fine.
that's for you.
Plenty of time.
okay, so
Since you asked for it.
we'll pass that around. Good.
Okay, all right.
For water.
I can't lose the opportunity to point out that they're building 3 slips to accommodate different types of vessels. And I know you'll always have freight vessels and passenger vessels, but HMS in their report talked about the operational costs of running different types of vessels versus standardizing the fleet. If the fleet were more standardized, parts would be easier. You'd probably get away with 2 slips here, and I'm sure that there are other efficiencies that might take place.
Well, we're dealing with our realities as they exist today, which is we have a fleet of different vessels. And, we have different nuances to the thinking that HMS put into its report on some issues. We have designed some of the boats because we have 2 very different routes. And so we have I want to say a 26-mile route to Nantucket. We have a 6 to 7 mile route to the...
Not serviced out of Woods Hole.
No, but our boats do go to Nantucket from Hyannis, and so they're talking about the entire fleet.
Okay.
And so for the MV Woods Hole, which is our latest boat, they try to get the hull design and the vessel to be optimal to serve both routes. For the Governor, it's a double ender. It's never going to serve Nantucket. For the Island Home, it's a double ender. It's never going to serve Nantucket because double enders are for better use in shorter distances because you get more efficiencies that way. For longer distances, you get a better hull design for okay.
I get that.
So we're dealing with the fleets as we now have. It would be extraordinarily expensive to replace the fleet because you're talking probably about $50 million a
I'm just
boat.
pointing out
Okay.
the relationship.
But finally, the last thing, for the number of slips, we need, and we've always used the 3 slips for at least berthing purposes. And so when we are rebuilding the slips, we have to rebuild all 3 because we berth 3 boats here all during the summer. And we also have instances, as we found out horribly this past year, where you need the 3rd slip in the case of mechanical breakdown or something like that.
Yeah.
So
No need for more explanation.
Okay.
I'm just pointing out that we're talking about the site plan and how it's driven by different types of vessels. And, that's sort of the long-term plan.
Well, the only thing for the different types of vessels are the elevations of the transfer bridges. That's it. The elevations are different. The piers are pretty much the same elevation. Well, actually, this one is slightly lower, but those are the ones with the piers. The problem with the elevations are primarily around the entire terminal site, because not only do you have this coming up and raising this elevation from 5 to 6 feet to 9 feet and then to 13 feet, but then it has to go back down to 7 or 8 feet when it goes underneath the Crane Street Bridge. So you have to grade it that way too.
While we're on this, could I just ask one?
Okay.
Yeah, effectively, we're on question 2, so.
Okay, well, does everyone have a copy of this? Because several hours went into constructing it. I just want to make sure everyone's got it and we can be reading from it. And we've been asked not to miss any of these questions, or people are not going to be happy.
So as far as filling in the site, as a regular contractor working on regular commercial, non-governmental type projects, I would never be able to be allowed to fill in order to get above the floodplain. It's one thing that's explicitly prohibited. I think you guys are probably only able to do it because of your kind of exempt status from regulations.
I don't think we're filling above the floodplain.
I thought that was the reason for raising the building up, to get it out of the floodplain.
Well, the building is.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
the
what I'm
building has to.
saying. Well, no, it doesn't really actually have to.
Okay.
So now the building could be easily built on piers. The whole site could stay as it is. You could build stairs and ramps to get into the building, and you wouldn't have to fix this whole site. And you'd be more in line with what the environmentalists and conservationists like.
And we propose that. Concept C proposed keeping the elevations pretty much the same way as it was, and putting the terminal building on piles above so that we could have the staging area, and we would have elevated pedestrian walkways.
Right.
We would love to have that. It gives us far more than this terminal design does. It really does. I mean, operationally, not from a community viewpoint, we wouldn't love to have it. But as I said, I think the last meeting, Concept C was our dream proposal and the community's nightmare. But it really did everything, it would address that issue. Gave us all of the issue with all of the staging area, all the parking, even paid parking, metered parking spaces. It
Separated pedestrian traffic.
separated
Where was the
pedestrian
building located in Concept C?
right, 25 feet high, right, pretty much where this is now.
Same location?
Yep.
Oh, well,
And then we had
but you end up in effectively the same height anyways, whether you're on piers or
no,
raising the earth,
no,
right?
this is 13 feet versus 25 feet.
Oh, I see.
Saves on buffering.
Why would you have gone so high with the piers rather than just to the,
Because for the elevated walkways, you had to get our trucks underneath them. You had to get the commercial trucks underneath. So you have to have it high.
crazy?
And you're going back down.
And underneath the platform was going to be the staging area for the vehicles, so you had to have sufficient height.
Oh, but that's way too high.
That's
Why
right.
we're-
I'm thinking,
That's
why
why
would
we
you
are
That's
where
what
we
we're
are.
just trying to.
Why not?
You're just talking about putting it up on piers and keeping it at the same
Yeah,
elevation
keeping
as
it at the
proposed
minimal
now.
height that you need, turning it so you're not dealing with crazy grades all over the place. If you turned it and kept it just to the height that you need, you'd minimize your ramps and your walkways, you'd eliminate all the grading on the site. Wouldn't it be advantageous to do it that way? I don't understand the
No,
grading. Who's forcing you to lift the building and fix the grade like that? Whose suggestion is that?
well, I don't know whose suggestion it was. It probably were our architects and engineers and all of us combined. But we have a situation where you have to have all of the passengers get conveniently from the transfer bridges, from the piers to the building. We don't want a series of ramps. We don't want a series of switchback ramps that we would have to do that at the end. We don't want stairs. We want as convenient and easy a progression as possible.
I see,
And in
when
order
you're
to keep
doing it with the grade, you're able to drive over it, where if it was
Right.
ramps, you
Because
can't.
you also have the issue with the bus traffic and that as well, too.
Right.
With the drop off and, some, with all the switchbacks you have to have.
And I hope you don't, I'm trying to answer your questions,
Yeah.
especially but they're sort of coming out of the blue in a way, so
Yeah.
I'm doing my best I can.
I appreciate it.
Okay, but there were a lot of issues with, getting everyone around conveniently. It's a they're going in every direction. We're loading 2 boats at a time. One's discharging, one's loading. We have to have the buses come around. Concept C had, we were going to open up over here and just stay up on the top platform. This one is less expensive than the Concept C.
Well, I could see that going that high.
Right.
I can't imagine why, I guess I'm reinventing the wheel on you, but I just can't imagine why, if the whole lot is flat and the building was turned, you can't maneuver the buses around. It just seems like easily be able to be done.
Steve, what are the reasons you can't move the building 90 degrees?
There are principally, my understanding, my memory from that, because we tried it, is that you get a lot more pedestrian and vehicle conflict when you turn the building around. You have a lot of the buses not being able to make a smooth transition. This is the easiest traffic flow coming into and out of the terminal for most of the traffic that comes in. It's the buses, it's not only our buses, it's Peter Pan, it's the RTA, and many people who are here for some drop-off and pickup. It's an easy flow, straight across and out. When you turn the building, you either have to put it into this flow of traffic, and you're impinging that, or you're putting that into the area where the trucks have to come around in order to get onto the slips. And they have to be straight when they hit the transfer bridge, which means they have to be straight before the transfer bridge.
Turning radiuses. of the
Turning
trucks
radiuses. We originally, when we had the original consensus solution as we saw it, the terminal building was even slightly more towards the water. And it was only after that our engineers did the truck radius turning situations with some software, I don't know exactly which software they used, that they determined that the building could not be any closer than it is now. And so you can't have the building go any closer towards the water because that would interfere with all the radiuses for the trucks turning. And you can't really have it go any further backwards because of the interference with the traffic flow with the buses. And that ends up being the place where it is.
How did they even consider then the other 3 E's if traffic flow is such an overriding factor?
We considered them because we were asked to do so by the working group that we had with the Woods Hole Community Association and the Woods Hole Business Association at the time. We had meetings over the course of 4 months, 6 months, 7 months, or whatever, in which they said, well, could you try and see if putting the building here in this location would work? And so we would have our architects go back, and they went back and gave a proposal, and then we'd come in and we'd say, well, that doesn't work because of X, Y, and Z. And so they would put the buildings, and they would say, it legally works. You can do it this way, and you can get through here with, like E1, I think, has stairs or a ramp or both in order to get, because down there, and then to go back down from 13 feet, then to go back up to 9 feet. Or when the building was located somewhere else, it ended up that all the shuttle buses were coming in front of the terminal building, and as a result, you were having that conflict. And then you also had all of pedestrians having to go in front of the transfer bridges. And we looked at all of those other locations. And while we were trying our best, and this was early on in the process, it was a feasibility study, we concluded that those just wouldn't work for us operationally, because we are the boat line. I mean, they do consider us the lifeline to the islands. We have to operate efficiently as we can and safely as we can. So we went through that process, and to revisit now, we can revisit it, but I feel confident we're going to come to the same conclusion because we tried our best. And we still have the same trucks, we still have the same cars. If anything, we have more, and we have the same or more.
More what? More?
Cars or trucks than we had in 2013. I'll make that concession. I'll make that concession. And that's where, and we tried.
So that was your first choice anyway, is that right?
No, this wasn't, well.
No, I mean,
let me
having it
see.
turned and fitting it
Yeah, C was.
the other direction.
Well, for Terminal C, that's B. That was pretty much where it was in B. And C was there. So it's pretty much the same thing. Yep.
Can I ask a question now that we're on water? Because you were talking about outfall pipes before.
Yep.
What is the surface? Is it permeable or is it impermeable?
I think, and I don't know. That's the answer, I don't know. But my sense is that it's impermeable.
Yeah, there was a recommendation in the ENF that it be impermeable because there'd be so much oil that it would clog the
All right.
pores.
Thank you. Okay.
So
If I can't
I
answer-
found that convincing.
Okay.
Although we should double check. But that was the reason given.
The reason I ask is because I know somebody who has developed permeable surfaces for many large-scale shopping center parking places.
Right. We have that at Thomas B. Landers.
Okay.
Yeah, we
So,
do
I
have-
mean, my point is that that in terms of water movement, it could change a scenario significantly, assuming that there isn't a lot of oil leakage. I mean, do we know that?
Well, plus 5 years have gone by. Maybe the technology is better.
It also is impacted by the weight of the vehicles too. So for instance, at our parking lot, while we have porous asphalt for the parking area, the ring road that goes around it cannot be a porous asphalt because it wouldn't work. So Is the other.
You mean Woods Hole, the ring road?
Thomas B. Landers.
Oh, Thomas B. Landers, oh. But I'm just talking about, because this is such
For a
a,
parking application, it has a good use, but for a traffic area, there's issues with it.
because of how the substrate can manage the weight.
Part of the weight, and then also, I know for Thomas B. Landers, it clogs up after a while, so, and it would clog with all the traffic going on this, I would assume.
Well,
It doesn't make this a good application for the non-porous, and if there is an oil spill from any car or truck, and we don't have control over all of those, there is, I would assume that there's less likelihood of being able to control that spill.
Well, I want to know that because, I mean, you haven't put out a bid for it yet, right?
Yes, we have.
Oh, you have?
All of this up here, for the front.
And that's all
Except
fait
back
accompli?
here. This was awarded in December of 2017,
Okay.
phases 1 through 4, phases 1 through 4. 5 and 6 are the back part. And we can look at 6, and maybe the vehicle staging area is a good.
Because I want to learn more about that from my side, but if you're open to being able to hear other stuff like that,
We have not gone beyond schematic for phases 5 and 6.
which
That's
is
very
parking further
That's the
away
staging
from the
area in the
water.
back, right.
Okay.
Let's let Lori do her job.
Okay,
Well,
so
we're still on two, I don't think.
we're still,
uh-huh.
we're still on question 2.
So I'm hearing traffic, you're optimizing traffic flow with
We
the
believe we are.
building in this orientation,
Yes.
in this location.
In fact, our architects have said, really, this is the only place left for the building, given everything else that the site has to do in terms of traffic.
May I ask a general question? Is there any concern about the 17 columns of automobiles getting around that building?
There is concern about that. We have talked about that. We are, one of the, if you look at the prior concepts that we went through, we had always put the staging in the front to make it easier. But that required the building to be farther away from the water. And that was the issue back in May of 2014, when the board said it's too far back for our passengers, many of whom can't walk that far. And that was with Kathy Norton and Mark Hanover. They both expressed concern about the distance from the water. That's when we finally came back to move it this way. And so we do have a concern about the cars, but it was a compromise, as many things are in life. It was a balancing of the needs of the two things. We expect that for the majority part of the year, people who take their cars to the island will be primarily island residents or those who've gone to the island before. They will be familiar with our operations, our terminal. They will know what they have to do when they're called to load the boat, and they will be able to go around. During the times when they go, the idea, for example, if they're using slip 1, they're going to be going through slip 1. There aren't going to be any passengers at that point, because the passengers are going to be going through this walkway that's to the north of slip 1 to the terminal and that way. So the idea is that there will not be any pedestrian vehicular conflicts for the car staging and the passengers going on to that boat. The conflicts will be the shuttle buses that come down, which are not as frequent, and we have that conflict now, and we've been able to manage that. And then when the cars or the vehicles get off of the boat at slip 1, they can go right up Covey Road and avoid that conflict. So the idea is that this design, the way it is, minimizes the conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles as much as we think possible. The other concepts had many more conflicts. You had people having to walk in front of the transfer bridge to get to the pier. Those are the ones with this one up there. This one doesn't have that. Then when we use slip 2, you can have them, we made it so that slip 2 can be boarded on both sides. So you could have your passengers load and unload this way. You can have your cars and trucks unload, go up Cadre Ave, and then you can still have them come in and board and load by slip-through that way. So you can have that completely separated from the pedestrians and the vehicles again.
So you're saying there's minimal vehicular traffic through here?
This is all staging. I mean, this is all boarding. There's no stagings in the back. Truck staging is over here. So the only cars that should be going through here are the cars going on and off the boat. That's the idea.
And again, we need the area for the turning radiuses of the trucks.
For the trucks. During the slow season, during the off-season, I'll say, I don't know what, during the winter and spring, because we now no longer have an off-season, or we no longer have a slow season. We may have, given the fact that the shuttle buses, especially coming down from Palmer Avenue, carry a lot of commuters, they know what they're doing, they don't have to go to the terminal. We may have the, instead of the shuttle buses coming in here, they may just come down there and just put them on the boat. But that's when there's little conflict, little traffic conflict. And when we use slip 3, because there will be times that we use slip 3, and first of all, when we're constructing slips 1 and 2. Number 3, you have the pedestrians coming down here. You have the, that's the one slip where we would have the cars and trucks go up Railroad Avenue, and then you can load from that side. But again, our plans are to use slips 1 and 2 primarily, slip 3 only when we need to because of problems here. Or also, you know, we usually have a freight boat in slip 3 that we would like to get that out in the morning, load it from there instead of having to move it to another slip to load, and the same thing at the end of the day. So this design, there's nothing perfect, but it really, we think, manages the traffic and pedestrian flow better than any of the other designs and makes it into an efficient system. We want people to flow through.
Steve, one of the things that never seems to get touched in any of these plans is the employee parking lot.
Correct.
I'm sure you have a reason for that.
Yes.
I won't.
Someone specifically asked, why is that off
Yeah,
limits?
Okay. First of all, we did look at the location here, close to it, for the terminal building, and that was a problem because of it just isn't a good design to have all of your passengers go from here across the traffic that way. So, as far as a terminal building is concerned, it's not a good location. It just isn't. The best location for the terminal building is here. And then we are planning to get all of our equipment storage needs in this place here. So if we can do that, which is the plan, what is the best use for that? And the best use for that is employee parking. And not surprisingly, that's what it's already been used for. The reason for the employee parking is they arrive, I've been there because I've been down there at 4 o'clock in the morning looking at the things. They arrive long before the terminal operations go, the shuttle buses go. You know, they come down for the boats, they operate the boats, they start up the boats. We need to have employee parking on site for the efficient and reliable operation of our ferries. You have to have the vessel crews come down, be there, and be able to get there and not be dependent upon being up at Palmer Avenue and waiting for a shuttle bus. That everything that adds distance adds potential problems.
A couple of responses
And expense.
on that. Isn't there a lot of parking up here along the bike path that might be able to be designated for employee parking? And the other thing, just so I don't monopolize this, is I spend a lot of time in airports and I ride these conveyor belts from one terminal to another. You could run a covered walkway, automated walkway.
Yeah, this is waterfront marine environment, and
We heard loud and clear when we presented Concept C that it was going to turn it into a Logan Airport. We heard that during one of the.
So this is a perfect segue to question one.
Okay.
May
May
I, Lori, just
Certainly not.
No, I mean, but just so you know, we did try that. By the way, the parking in the back parking lot, we have solved a lot of problems there that we had in the past by having it be filled with people who don't come as often because the neighbors don't like all the commotion early in the morning. So if you had all the employees there at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, then driving down, and if they're late, they're speeding up, you have that issue. You have a lot of the employees changing shifts and watches midday, et cetera, so you get a lot of movement there. You have an active bicycle path, so that increases the possibility of accidents with bicyclists. The idea we now, first of all, first priority, which we negotiated with the town a few years ago, was we reserved how many spaces for the town use? 40 spaces. And so, and they get the top 40 spaces. They get the ones closest to the village. And then the rest are essentially the people who commute. And they're the ones that are familiar with that area. They know to watch for bicyclists. We tell them to do so. It seems to be working well, and
They like it so much they want some more.
do they? Okay. I mean, well, it's your property. Although, you know, it's a perfect situation. It's their property, but we have the access. So, you know, only two people who are totally self-interested, wouldn't be able to get a deal. I mean, there should be a deal no matter what. Okay.
Steve, will the Steamship Authority consider turning the building by 90 degrees?
We have considered that, and we have concluded we cannot.
So your answer is no.
But my answer is what I just said. We tried that, and we've concluded it cannot.
The answer is no.
Now, there were some other potential considerations, maximizing photovoltaic panels. If you had that 90% turn, is that
90 degrees.
so small a factor that you're not willing to consider it?
We're looking at other options for solar panels. I'm going to call them solar panels because that's the vernacular. We want to provide some cover to our customers and other people as they wait for buses. They wait not only for our buses, but they wait for Peter Pan buses. We're looking into having that shelter be covered with solar panels, which is a good use for that.
What about the employee parking?
Over the employee parking, we could try that. I mean, we haven't thought of it.
It's controversial in this town, but I would suggest it's
not that
everywhere else in the world.
It's not controversial. The planning board tried to put regulations on it, and
Yeah.
the meeting said, no, we just want it everywhere.
Right. It's interesting, when we did this in 2013, 2014, we talked about having them as much as possible. And I shouldn't talk out of school, but I approached Catherine and say, what is that? And Catherine, to her credit, her good credit, I think my memory is that she said she wasn't going to go one way or the other because she thought that some of the community would like it, some of the community wouldn't. And it wasn't a position that she was going to take a position on, whether we should or not. It was really up to us. We can look at it. The employee parking lot may not be a good location because it may not be the perfect for the sun with everything around it.
I bet there's big trees on that southern exposure.
There are trees. We think the bus waiting area may well be a good location. Because of the position of the building, it may be. We are looking at alternative designs for the building that may lend itself.
That's a good thing.
Okay, that may lend itself to that. It's not that. So that's where we are.
I mean,
Can
you
we
have a
question
huge
one?
real estate area there
Okay.
that could be could be covered.
Could we do question one before you say definitely yes or no on the 90 degree, on question two? Because question one might change your answer to question two.
All right.
Yeah, question one involves making the terminal building smaller and having it just provide the essential needs of the waiting area, the restrooms, the ticketing area, the cash room, a supply closet or whatever, and then putting more of incorporating the structure housing the employee needs, such as locker room, the offices for the manager and the agent, the training room, break room in the area over by the freight shed.
Okay. We've also been talking about that with the Woods Hole Community Association people. And when you look at the footprint of the building, and you put in there only on the first floor, what you need on the first floor, and that is the waiting room, the ticket sellers, the cash handling room, some vending. We aren't going to put the food,
Right, vending machines.
Vending
right,
machines.
Right.
A janitor's closet, we're going to need on the first floor, a little bit of storage, and the public restrooms. And I think that gives it up. We're working towards having the footprint of the building include only those items. Okay. At the moment, if we go back to the flattened salt box one, which is this one here, that's the waiting area, the vending, the restrooms, public restrooms. 13 is the elevator, because you need an elevator. Ticket sellers, cash handling and janitors, cash room and janitors, and then some storage, and then you have the locker room, and the rest of the employees' restroom. We're looking at reducing the footprint by taking these out and putting them upstairs.
Taking out what?
The locker room and the employee restrooms that are on the first floor.
But if you put them up where the employee parking is in the other building, then you don't need 2 staircases and you don't need an elevator if you don't have a second floor, and you just gained a lot of floor space on the first floor.
We're able to reduce the first floor. What we did with the view shadow studies, with those, that if you have a building with any type of a roof, even a one-story building, you block the view of the water anyway. And so there's no reason not to put a second floor on the building with the use of dormers or whatever, because you aren't going to go substantially higher, and you're going to get the amount, you're going to get potentially twice the amount of space.
So, Steve, with all respect, the petitioners were concerned about the height, yes, because it blocked the water, but also because it's huge if it has a second floor. That it's not just the water. I just want to make sure you. Okay. That is very much the message I took from many of the petitioners.
It's still going to be, if they think it's huge with 2 floors, it's still going to be almost, if not the same amount of huge with 1 floor with a roof on it. Because the second floor doesn't add that much more to the size of the building or the height of the building.
How much does it add?
I think the way we have it, none. Way with the dormers?
So have you considered looking, question 1 is asking, have you considered having all of the employee stuff in a separate building and then relook at your building where you don't have any employee stuff or anything, you just have your vending machine?
Yes, we have looked at that. This would all be, first of all, this is all the first floor stuff. Second floor stuff, where we're going to put the equipment storage building, we need all of that space